Hydropower is one of the oldest forms of capturing energy from the natural world. First used thousands of years ago to grind grains by using water to turn the paddles of water mills. Today, this same process uses moving water, but instead of turning paddles, hydropower uses the force of moving water to spin turbines in generators to create electricity. Hydropower is the most widely used form of renewable energy in the U.S., generating nearly 7% of all electricity production in 2009. Wherever there is moving water, hydropower is possible. Dams and rivers are the most common locations for generating hydroelectricity, but tidal areas of the ocean could be the next wave in hydro expansion. Hydropower has several advantages, such as low operating costs, hardly any release of greenhouse gas emissions or chemical waste, and the ability to serve as energy storage. But it does have some negative environmental effects, like the loss of habitat from flooding or disrupting fish migration routes. Dams are the largest contributor of hydroelectricity in the U.S., and the most well-known example is the Hoover Dam, which can produce 2,080 megawatts of power. Dams are typically built on rivers and store a large volume of water behind them, which is then released through turbines to generate electricity. The newest example of hydropower from a dam is the Three Gorges Dam in China. This dam opened up in 2008, producing more than 18,000 megawatts, with a maximum capacity of more than 22,000 megawatts. Hydropower can also be generated along rivers and differs from dams because these run-of-the-river generators only use flowing water without backing up water on one side of the machine. One of the most reliable forms of hydropower is tidal power. Tidal power works like an upside-down wind turbine, with motion from currents turning turbines to generate electricity. Ocean currents are highly predictable because they're dictated by the effect of gravity from the moon. Several other forms of marine energy are in the test phases across the world, include marine current power, which captures kinetic energy from underwater currents, and wave power, which uses surface waves to generate electricity. People have been using wind as a form of energy for thousands of years to power sailboats and windmills. Without the power of wind, our ancestors would have struggled to travel across oceans, trade with other nations, and explore the wonders of the world. Wind is air in motion. It's caused by uneven temperatures on the Earth's surface when heated by the sun. Because the air over the land heats up more quickly than the air over the water, the warm air rises and the heavier, cooler air rushes in to take its place, creating wind. While this process is not as predictable as the rising and setting of the sun, it's just as renewable. In 2010, wind power generated about 2% of total U.S. electricity. Wind turbines harness the kinetic energy of moving air. The air blows over the blades, creating lift just like the wings of an airplane. This causes the blades to move, and through a drive shaft, this turns a generator that creates electricity. Similar to solar arrays, wind farms connect individual wind turbines together to generate electricity on a large scale. These wind farms can be built on both land and water. Building wind farms off the coastline of the United States is a new idea for capturing more of the wind's energy. Offshore areas have plenty of space, the wind is reliable, and wind farms built off the coastline would be much closer to major cities than those that already exist on land. The first offshore wind farm to win a permit from the federal government is scheduled to be built off the shore of Cape Cod, Massachusetts. Current plans call for 130 wind turbines, or enough to power hundreds of thousands of homes. If you've ever been to a natural hot spa, felt the warmth of a volcano, or seen the geysers of Yellowstone National Park, you've experienced the natural power of geothermal energy. Geothermal energy is contained in underground reservoirs of steam, hot water, and hot, dry rocks. The temperature of the Earth's core is hotter than the surface of the sun, and its power is almost as renewable. According to the U.S. Geothermal Energy Association, the The United States is currently the world leader in geothermal power generation, with roughly 30% of the current worldwide installed capacity. In fact, a 2006 MIT study showed the accessible hot rocks beneath the U.S. contain enough energy to run the country for 130,000 years. However, critics say geothermal energy production may cause earthquake activity because the most prolific hot zones are usually the most seismically active, and nearly all forms of geothermal energy require drilling or rock fracturing. In addition, the Department of Energy says as of 2010, geothermal power only represented 3% of all the renewable energy consumed across the country, and older wells do suffer from reduced production after several decades. Now, when used to generate electricity, geothermal energy requires only two ingredients: heat and water. Wells are drilled into the ground in suitable areas, and energy is captured by pumping water down to hot rocks, which creates steam that rises to the surface. This steam is then supplied to turbines, which drive generators and produce electricity and heat. Geothermal technology can also be used to regulate temperature in commercial and residential buildings, reducing or eliminating the energy demands of cooling and heating systems. Unlike the air above ground, the Earth has a constant temperature, which makes geothermal energy very predictable. Now, just 10 feet below the Earth's surface, the ground retains a stable temperature of around 50 to 60 degrees Fahrenheit, no matter what the weather is above ground. This temperature stays cooler than the air above ground in the summer and warmer in the winter. If you use a geothermal heat pump to push water through underground pipes at the right depth, it will return at the desired temperature to help you heat or cool your house. Biomass refers to the use of organic material or waste products from plants and animals in traditional energy generation facilities. Biomass contains solar power absorbed through photosynthesis, which is passed on to animals that eat those plants. Biomass fuels provided about 4% of the energy used in the U.S. in 2010. When burned, the stored energy in these materials is released as heat, just like when wood is burned in a fireplace or a campfire. This energy can generate steam in power plants to make electricity or provide heat to homes and businesses. Biomass is a renewable energy source because more trees, crops, and animals can always be grown, and waste products from these materials will always exist. Using more biomass could reduce fossil fuel demand and the amount of trash sent to landfills. The most common form of biomass in the United States is wood. Not only trees that have been cut down by individuals, but also the bark, sawdust, wood chips, scraps, and residues left over from commercial logging activities and paper mills. This process helps increase the productivity of deforestation and reduces the amount of waste from wood processing. Energy from wood and logging byproducts releases only carbon and burns without many of the harmful emissions of fossil fuels. These factors combine to make it one of the more attractive way of generating heat and electricity. However, wood isn't the only form of biomass. 11% of the total biomass energy consumed in the United States comes from garbage, including items from your old couch to scraps of leftover food, old leather, and recycled paper and cardboard, just to name a few. The average American produces 4.5 pounds of trash every single day. Rather than sending this trash to landfills, special waste-to-energy plants can burn it to make steam and heat buildings or generate electricity for the grid. However, waste-to-energy can also release harmful emissions from the chemicals contained in the trash. Biomass energy also refers to the gas created in landfills. Methane is naturally created when anaerobic bacteria that live in landfills decompose organic waste, and it has the same general composition as natural gas. Some landfills are installing facilities to capture this gas and send it to generation plants. Methane can also be used to heat homes and power stoves and grills. Methane is considered the most potent greenhouse gas, so capturing its emissions from landfills helps reduce global warming. Since the Industrial Revolution, people have relied on liquid fuel to power their lives. These resources have primarily come from fossil fuel sources like oil and natural gas, buried deep below the Earth's surface. While convenient, liquid fossil fuels are finite and emit harmful emissions. But recent technological advances are creating opportunities to develop biofuels from plants and animals, renewable liquid transportation fuel sources. The energy in these crops can be harnessed as quickly as the resources grow, bringing new crops and more fuel each season. Biofuels are made from organic materials such as corn, sugarcane, switchgrass, vegetable oil, animal fat, and recycled greases. Many different biofuels exist, but the most commonly used are ethanol and biodiesel. Ethanol is a clear and colorless alcohol fuel made by fermenting and distilling the natural sugars stored inside the plants into a liquid fuel suitable for use in internal combustion engines. The United States is the #1 user of ethanol in the world, most of which is made from corn. Brazil is the #1 producer of ethanol in the world, but most of their supply comes from sugarcane. Today, scientists are working on cheaper ways to make ethanol by using all parts of the plant rather than just the grain. Throughout history, ethanol has made its way in and out of cars. The original 1908 Ford Model T was actually designed to work on a fuel mixture of ethanol and gasoline. However, in 1919, Prohibition banned the use of ethanol because it was considered liquor. During World War II, ethanol was brought back into use to relieve the high demand for oil. Today, biofuels are usually blended with petroleum fuels. Nearly all gasoline in the United States contains a mixture of up to 10% ethanol. Biofuels can also be used entirely on their own, and scientists are working on innovations to reduce the cost of ethanol. Another form of biofuel is biodiesel, a renewable fuel that can be used in place of diesel fuel. This renewable diesel is non-toxic and biodegradable and is made from vegetable oils, animal fat, or greases, including recycled restaurant grease. Many proponents consider biofuels carbon neutral, because the amount of carbon dioxide emitted when they are burnt is less than fossil fuels and can theoretically be converted back into oxygen by the next generation of biofuel crops. However, critics say biofuels, especially ethanol, consume large amounts of water, divert food supply away from the market, and encourage unnecessary plowing of grassland and watershed areas. Solar power is the most abundant, most renewable resource we have. If we could collect 1/100th of 1% of the sun's energy reaching the Earth, it would be more energy than all humans use today. Just outside Yuma, Arizona is the sunniest place in the world. 90% of the year the skies are clear, and these southwest deserts have enough suitable land to supply 80% of the entire planet's current use. The sun has produced energy for billions of years and naturally energizes all of the plants on the planet. These plants give energy to animals and power the human body. This is done by a process called photosynthesis. For decades now, scientists have unlocked the secrets of how a plant creates energy through photosynthesis and can duplicate that process using modern technology and silicone. This process of creating electricity from the sun can power our homes and cities. There are two ways of capturing the power of the sun. First is photovoltaic devices, more commonly known as solar cells. They change sunlight directly into electricity. These individual cells are joined together to make solar panels. These can be placed on rooftops, in calculators, and even on large-scale fields covering many acres to power cities. Solar energy systems produce no air pollutants or carbon dioxide. And because they can be placed on the top of existing buildings, they do not require extra land for power plants. Another way to capture the sun's energy is by capturing its heat. Solar thermal electric power plants generate electricity by concentrating solar energy to boil water, which then produces steam. This steam turns a turbine, which moves a generator to produce electricity. Solar thermal electric plants consist of fields of mirrors to reflect the concentrated sunlight onto a receiver. The receiver then collects this solar energy and converts it to heat. The production of energy from solar thermal plants work essentially the same as fossil fuel power plants. But instead of producing steam from burning fossil fuels, the steam is made by the sun. The only downside to this source of technology is that the power only exists as long as the sun is up. To help solve this problem, other forms of solar technology have been explored. Scientists are currently working on methods to store this energy for cloudy days and nighttime. One way to conquer this problem is building new power plants that combine a multitude of renewable energy sources. Using solar power and wind power and biogas could do this. When one method is not creating electricity, the other could take over. Other methods, such as storing excess power in batteries, could also be a possible future for solar technology.